Have you ever locked eyes with someone in the dark? If you'd like, follow along as I walk you through what happened. Step by step. Feel what I felt. And maybe by the end, you'll understand why I can't forget it. It was the last week of March. Winter hadn't fully let go yet. The sky was overcast, the air was cold, and rain had been falling all day. It was a weekday. My brother had gone out of town for a few days, and I was staying at his place to look after the house and feed his cat. The house was in a quiet, isolated neighborhood just outside the city. Hardly any traffic passed by, and at night it was pitch black. No nearby streetlights, no distant sounds. But honestly, I didn't mind. A few days of silence sounded perfect. Time to unwind, read a bit, just breathe. That night, it was past 2 a.m. I couldn't sleep. I was in the small upstairs study, flipping through a book I'd found on my brother's shelf, sipping something warm. The kind of silence that surrounded me was so deep, I could hear my own heartbeat. Just the wind brushing against the windows now and then, and the rain tapping gently on the roof. Everything else was still. Then I glanced at the clock. 2:50 a.m. All right, that's enough for tonight, I mumbled to myself, and decided to head downstairs to lie down. That's when I felt it, a strange chill in the air. The heater was on, but my toes had gone cold. As I passed through the kitchen, I caught a damp, earthy smell. I figured maybe a window was open. But when I stepped further into the room, I realized the truth. The sliding glass door that led to the backyard was wide open. At first I thought, maybe my brother didn't close it properly before he left. But that didn't make sense. I had been in the kitchen earlier that morning. I touched that door. It was locked. I slid it shut and checked the latch. Then I walked through the rest of the house. Windows, doors, everything else, untouched. Nothing was out of place, except the cat was gone. Usually, at that hour, she'd be curled up on the couch. But now, nowhere. I called her name quietly. Nothing. The house was too quiet. Even my thoughts felt louder. I whispered to myself, calm down, but it didn't help. Something felt wrong, but I had no proof. Still on edge, I went back upstairs. I didn't pick the book back up. I just sat there. And the silence. It didn't feel like silence anymore. It felt like someone else was breathing in the room with me. Then I heard it. A soft, dragging sound from downstairs, like something being pulled slowly across the carpet. Then a faint creak. Wood against weight. A footstep. But not confident, purposeful steps. These were hesitant, like someone unfamiliar with the house, like a stranger. Every muscle in my body locked up. I stepped out into the hallway toward the top of the stairs. No lights were on. I squinted into the darkness, trying to see, and then I saw him. A man standing in the living room, facing the window. He was hunched over. His back was to me. He was holding something, but I couldn't tell what. It looked like he was examining something on the floor, or maybe smelling it. The cat. I froze. I didn't even breathe. My heart was pounding so loud, I was sure he could hear it. I reached into my pocket, trying to grab my phone quietly, but it made a noise. He heard it. He turned his head toward me. Our eyes met, and in that moment, I knew something was very, very wrong. He didn't stand up. He didn't speak. Instead, he started to crawl. One knee, then a hand, moving low to the ground. He turned his body toward me, not like a person, but like an animal. Silently, across the carpet. Quick, but controlled. That was it. I bolted. I ran up the stairs, 3 steps at a time. I slammed the door behind me, locked it, and pressed my whole weight against it. My legs were shaking, but I held firm. With trembling hands, I unlocked my phone, called the police. My voice was barely a whisper, but I managed to say, "Someone's in the house. They came through the back. Please, please come." Downstairs, I heard something crash, then footsteps, then silence. Maybe he left. Maybe he hid. Maybe he was still down there. Every minute waiting for the police felt like a lifetime. When they arrived, they searched the entire house. Nothing. No sign of him. But near the back door latch, there was a fresh mark, like someone had used a screwdriver to force it open. Nothing else was touched. Nothing was stolen. All the doors, windows, and furniture were exactly as they should be. Even the cat came out, shaking, wide-eyed, and completely silent. The officer said he probably thought the house was empty. Once he realized someone was inside, he bailed. "You're lucky." Lucky. Was I? Because some nights, when I glance toward the stairs in the dark, I still feel like there's something moving just below the edge of my sight. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's just in my head. But there's one thing I'll never forget. The way he looked at me before he crawled. This happened about 2 months ago. I had just finished my night shift. It was a little past midnight, and the rain outside was pouring like a waterfall. The wind was howling sideways, and each drop hit my face like tiny needles. My clothes clung to my skin, and my shoes were completely soaked through. I was cold, exhausted, and sleep-deprived. All I could think about was getting home and collapsing into bed. When I finally opened the door to my building, the hallway was dim. The lights were technically on, but most of the bulbs weren't working. Maybe they'd burnt out, or maybe the last storm had done some damage. The silence inside was thick, unnaturally so. At the far end of the hall, one weak fluorescent light kept flickering. I stepped into the elevator. Just as the doors were about to close, someone pushed through and got in. He was drenched, his hair dripping wet, coat still soaked. Water pooled beneath him. He didn't say a word. Just calmly, almost too calmly, pressed the button for the second floor. But the elevator didn't stop there. It kept going, all the way up to the fourth. He didn't move. His head was slightly lowered, his eyes hidden beneath wet strands of hair. He never looked at me. We just stood there, breathing in that small, damp space. When the door finally opened, I bolted. My hands were trembling as I unlocked my apartment. "It's just exhaustion," I told myself. "You're overtired, that's all." I shut the door behind me and was about to lock it when I heard it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, just outside. He was still out there, wandering the hallway. That cold knot settled deep in my stomach. Why hadn't he gotten off at the second floor? I changed out of my wet clothes, dried my hair, tried to come up with excuses. Maybe he just moved in. Maybe he was visiting someone upstairs. But none of it really sat right. I went into the living room, but I didn't turn on the light. For some reason, the dimness felt safer. I filled the kettle. Something warm would help. That's when the doorbell rang. I froze. I didn't move, didn't make a sound. My heart was pounding. I slowly crept to the door and looked through the peephole. It was him, still wet, still expressionless. I slipped the chain on and opened the door just a few inches. A cold breeze swept in. We locked eyes, and in that moment, something felt wrong. Not threatening, not angry, just wrong. like he wasn't really there. He said, his voice low and hoarse. Does someone named Sarah live here? No, I answered. That was it. No questions, no small talk. Every instinct told me not to keep that door open a second longer. I closed it, locked it. Then I stood there, listening. No footsteps, no movement. Was he gone? Or was he still standing right outside? The silence pressed in as heavily as the rain outside. I eventually made my way to the bedroom. I didn't bother turning on the lights. I changed into a dry shirt and lay down. But sleep wouldn't come. That sentence kept echoing in my head. That man. He shouldn't have been there. Even the sound of the rain faded, like the world itself was holding its breath. Then, click. A deep, solid sound. The door. I sat straight up, heart hammering. I reached under the bed and grabbed the metal baseball bat I kept there. My fingers wrapped tight around the cold handle. I crept into the hallway. My steps felt disconnected from the floor, like I was floating. Every sense sharpened. I could feel that I wasn't alone. I flipped on the light and saw it. The front door was wide open. My eyes locked on the bathroom at the end of the hall, and then a noise. A soft rustling, a quiet breath, not my own. I held the bat tighter. I stepped forward, but I couldn't bring myself to look inside. My palms were slick with sweat. Then something inside me snapped. Without thinking, I grabbed my keys, flung open the door, and ran. Down the stairs, barely keeping my footing, out into the street, into the rain. I pulled out my phone and called the police. When the officers arrived, we went upstairs together. My whole body was tense, every breath shallow. The apartment was quiet, almost too quiet. Lights on, nothing out of place. Then we headed for the bathroom. An officer swung the door open, fast, and there he was, crouched behind the shower curtain. His eyes met ours, calm, steady, too calm. He didn't flinch, didn't speak for a moment. Then, "I'm looking for Sarah," he said. "She used to live here." His voice wasn't angry, it wasn't frantic. It was hollow, too calm. As they led him away, he turned back toward me, his eyes empty, like staring into a dried-up well. No bottom, no echo. Later I found out. Years ago, a woman named Sarah had lived in that apartment. She'd moved away to another city. The man they took away was her ex. He'd been obsessed, possessive. She'd cut all contact. But he had never forgotten the address. This happened last summer. I had taken a short trip to an old cabin in the woods, secluded, overlooking a quiet lake. I was alone for a few days. Honestly, I don't even remember how long I'd been there. At first, the silence felt like medicine. But when you're alone long enough, that same silence starts to wear you down. It was my last night. I was supposed to head back to the city in the morning. But as night fell, a strange unease began to creep in. There was no clear reason. Maybe it was the storm rolling in. Maybe just the weight of being alone for too long. By evening, the sky had turned heavy and gray. The trees swayed and groaned in the wind, as if the whole forest were sighing together. Then the rain hit, fast and hard, slamming against the windows. A flash of lightning lit up the entire cabin, followed by a thunderclap that cracked the sky in two. And just like that, the power went out. Everything was swallowed by darkness. My phone had no signal, maybe one bar at best. I managed to find my flashlight, but the matches were damp, so no candles. That dim flashlight was all I had. It barely lit a small circle around me. The darkness was always pressing in, close. It was just past midnight. I couldn't sleep. Loneliness was usually something I could handle, but that night it felt different, heavier, like the silence wasn't empty but watching. My throat was dry. I decided to wash my face. Maybe that would snap me out of the strange feeling crawling up my spine. Each step across the old wooden floor echoed too loudly. The boards groaned underfoot, and every sound seemed to stir something in the darkness. I found myself holding my breath. That's when I realized something unsettling. When silence stretches too long, it stops feeling natural. Your ears start inventing things. Whispers, breathing, movement. I reached the bathroom door and hesitated, just for a second. It felt like someone was on the other side, waiting. I shook the thought off and stepped in. I placed the flashlight on the sink, bent down, splash of cold water, eyes closed, silence. Then, I lifted my head, looked into the mirror, and froze. There was someone in the bathtub, a figure, crouched, still, watching. Its eyes were wide and glassy, wet, expressionless. No coat, no shoes, just a thin, soaked shirt clinging to its skin. And those eyes, locked on mine. For a second, I couldn't move. My brain refused to believe it. I turned around slowly, and he was there. It wasn't a reflection. He was real. We stared at each other. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. My body wouldn't respond. I backed away, step by step, never taking my eyes off him. My heartbeat was deafening in my chest. My legs gave out once. I hit the wall, but I somehow found the door. I turned the handle and burst outside. The rain slammed into my face like ice. I could barely keep my eyes open. My shoes sank into the mud as I stumbled forward. I pulled out my phone. A single bar of signal blinked on the screen, but I barely saw it. All I could think about was him. That silent, motionless man, just standing there in the bathtub. I looked back at the cabin. The door remained closed. The windows were dark, but I knew he was still inside. I waited in the rain. I don't know how long. Time melted. My whole body was shaking. Every tree branch looked like a figure. Every sound twisted into something more. The storm mixed with the rustling of the forest, creating something unnatural. Like there was another sound layered beneath it all. Something aware. Watching. Then I heard a noise behind the cabin. Wood creaking, something snapping. A window? I turned, and I saw him. A silhouette. Walking slowly into the forest. Not running, just calmly moving away. He had nothing in his hands, his back to me. The light didn't catch his face, but I knew it was him. And that's when it hit me. The bathroom window. I'd opened it earlier that day to air out the room, and forgot to close it. It wasn't very high off the ground, easy to climb through. In the middle of that storm, that man, whoever he was, had slipped in, quietly, like he'd done it before. When the authorities finally arrived, I still couldn't speak. I had no words. They searched the cabin. No broken doors, no shattered windows. Everything was locked, except the bathroom window. It was slightly ajar, and on the floor below it, bare, muddy footprints. They led to the bathtub, then stopped. We figured out how he got in, but why he did it. Why he stood there like that. Why he left without saying a word. That remains unanswered. All I know is this. He was there. I saw him. We locked eyes, and he did nothing. And somehow, that was the most terrifying part. The stillness, the silence, the way he just was, as if that alone was the threat. Since that night, I can't look directly into mirrors. Every time I step into a bathroom, I still pause at the door and listen.